Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Devious Den. Is our generation freer than our grandparents? Let's talk about that. Freedom. What exactly does it mean? To have freedom means what? To be free? But isn't that just using the word to describe the word? Which doesn't really answer anything. Before one can see how much freedom they have to know what version of freedom they're talking about. For me, I classify the word freedom to mean the ability to do with no restraints. To do what, you may ask? Well, anything. Freedom allows you the choice, or doing what you want, becoming who you want to be, and just living how you want to live. In a perfect world, that means no restraints, such as bias, money, time, or energy. But we don't live in a perfect world, do we? Now, for the question of the video. Is our generation freer than our grandparents? That depends on where you look. Every generation has hurdles, and sometimes those hurdles aren't seen until generations later, when we're looking back on history. Before I answer the question outright, I want to take a closer look at each generation. What I want to do is look at the 6 generations that are still living in America now. That includes the GI generation, the silent or mature generation, the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y or millennials, and Generation Z or boomlets. I was actually inspired to create this video based off of a BuzzFeed video of the exact same thing, where they looked at the 6 generations from the past, the present, and the future. The GI generation is a generation shaped by the Great Depression, World War II, Pearl Harbor, and FDR's New Deal. Born between the years 1901 and 1926, this generation was of a community mindset and was big on teamwork to overcome and progress. They lacked the conveniences of the modern day, such as electricity, refrigeration, and air conditioning. There was no such thing as retirement for this generation. They worked until they died. They also avoided debt, so they saved their money and preferred to use cash. This was a generation of big times. The Great Depression was the great one. The World War was the big one. They saved the world and built a nation. Silent generation was shaped by the Korean War, the space race, McCarthyism, the Cold War, and the American dream. This generation was born in the years spanning from 1927 to 1945. Within this generation, they had one job for life, they married for life, and they stuck to conformity. They focused on fitting in, not fighting back against the government. They were just being content. For them, retirement was swinging on the porch. The silent generation was less likely to fight back, not wanting to cause waves. Baby boomers were shaped by the events of Vietnam, Watergate, Woodstock, and the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. This generation was born between the years of 1946 and 1964. They brought about free love and nonviolent protesting. They were also the first ones to bring the women into the workforce, having a 2-income household. This was also the first generation where divorce was a thing. Their thought on retirement was to live life. Instead of sitting on a porch, they were out living their lives. Baby boomers are considered one of the largest generations in America and are considered to be the me generation, focusing more on civil rights and changing individual status. Generation X is the generation shaped by the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, the spread of AIDS, and MTV. This generation was born from the years of 1965 to 1980. This generation is considered to be almost the middle child, trapped between 2 very forceful generations. The generation itself is disillusioned with the government and companies. They have this mentality of saving the neighborhood over saving the world. They were the transition generation between written information to digital information. They're more likely to say they're not as unique as the surrounding generations. Generation Y, or millennials, are the generation shaped by 9/11, Obamacare, Great Recession, and the global internet. This is my generation, having been born between 1981 and 2000. With access to so much information, this generation tends to have very strong views. They saw a decline in crime and teen pregnancy, as well as the decline in being overtly religious. This generation has a very high academic pressure, with fear of school shootings making them aware early on that the world was not a safe place. They've been told that they are special constantly, and through many eyes, this generation is seen as being entitled. Generation Z, or Boomlets, are the generation shaped by global terrorism, the Trump election or Brexit, YouTube and digital media prevalence, and social media. Born after 2001, this generation has never experienced life without computers and the internet. To many, this generation are considered savvy consumers and are estimated to be the most entrepreneurial generation. Having been born in a time where same-sex marriage is a right, they're less aware of the social troubles. This generation was also born into a time with more racial diversity, making them one of the more open-minded generations out there. Each generation has had their share of different views, and experiences that have shaped these views. So in response to the question of, is our generation freer than our grandparents? The answer depends on your view. Everyone's going to have a different view of generations. People will see the bad in some and the best in others. Most people aren't going to be willing to see past the bias they have towards certain generations, and each generation is biased to themselves. My response? Yes, we are freer in a sense. We have the ability to be ourselves more than they did. The GI generation was trapped in a lifelong job with no future of escape in retirement. The silent generation conformed to society, with women being your typical stay-at-home mom. Our generation is more accepting of those who are different. We're willing to fight back for what we want while having so many opportunities open to us. Of course, we're also trapped in the digital sense. As great as technology can be, we're very, very trapped to it. We use it so much and we rely on it so much. So sure, we're free to be us, free to choose more and more than ever before. But that doesn't mean we aren't trapped in a vicious cycle. What do you think? Are we freer than our grandparents? Are you freer than your grandparents? If you haven't already, go check out the BuzzFeed video that inspired this video. You'll be amazed what you can learn about each generation.